Leinster's remarkable depth was once again on display at the Aviva Stadium on Saturday night as they overcame Edinburgh 28-20 in the United Rugby Championship, extending their winning run to 11 matches despite being stripped of their Six Nations contingent. It was a performance that underlined both Leinster's relentless consistency and Edinburgh's ongoing frustration in a campaign that continues to promise more than it delivers. The big picture on paper, this looked like a potential banana skin for Leinster. Deprived of their Ireland internationals and forced to field what could generously be described as a second-choice side, Leo Cullen's men were vulnerable in theory, if not in practice. Edinburgh, meanwhile, arrived in Dublin knowing their season desperately needed a statement result. With only 3 wins to their name before kickoff, this was an opportunity to inject belief and momentum into an otherwise faltering URC campaign. For a time, it appeared as though the visitors might just seize that chance. Edinburgh started with intent and accuracy, taking advantage of Leinster's early lack of cohesion. Tries from Duhan van der Merwe and Mail Lily Sadala, coupled with Ross Thompson's assured kicking, propelled the Scots into a 15-7 lead. At that point, Leinster looked unusually vulnerable, struggling to impose their usual physical dominance or dictate the tempo of the game. Yet, as has become so often the case, Leinster found answers. Max Deegan's first half try kept them within touching distance, and after the interval the hosts emerged with renewed purpose. The turning point came through a combination of sharper game management, increased physicality from the pack, and the clinical finishing of Scott Penny, who crossed the whitewash 3 times in a devastating second-half display. Luke McGrath controlled proceedings superbly from the base of the ruck, speeding up Leinster's ball and continually asking questions of an Edinburgh defense that began to creak under sustained pressure. The forwards, stung by their first-half struggles, raised their intensity and gradually squeezed the life out of the visitors. By the time Penny completed his hat trick, the outcome felt inevitable. Edinburgh did manage a late consolation try through Charlie Shiel, but the misconversion that followed summed up their night. It denied them a losing bonus point and reinforced the sense of a missed opportunity, a familiar feeling for a side that continues to flirt with competitiveness without quite delivering when it matters most. The Duhan van der Merwe dilemma. Few players in world rugby polarize opinion quite like Duhan van der Merwe, and this match did little to simplify the debate surrounding his current standing. Blessed with extraordinary physical attributes and a test try-scoring record that speaks for itself, the South African-born winger has nevertheless endured a noticeable dip in form over the past year. His inclusion here felt telling. Unlike young backrower Freddy Douglas, who may yet force his way into Gregor Townsend's Six Nations plans, van der Merwe's presence at the Aviva suggested a player drifting down the Scotland pecking order rather than one knocking on the international door. There were flashes of what he can still offer. His 50-meter try showcased his power and pace, even if much of the groundwork had been done by his teammates. A clever offload after a barnstorming run nearly produced another score and briefly reminded observers of his unique attacking threat. However, the broader picture remains concerning. Since the introduction of the revised escort laws, van der Merwe has been persistently targeted under the high ball, an area of his game that has been exposed repeatedly. Opponents have also grown increasingly comfortable testing him defensively, aware that his positional play and decision-making can be exploited. Add to that a disappointing British and Irish Lions tour and an inconsistent start to the 2025-26 season, and it becomes easier to understand Townsend's apparent willingness to look elsewhere. Van der Merwe's reputation as England's tormentor-in-chief may yet earn him another chance during the Six Nations, but on current evidence he is some distance from his devastating best. Star power makes the difference. One of the great luxuries Leinster possess is their ability to absorb international absences without losing quality. Even shorn of a host of Ireland stars, they were still able to call upon the services of a World Cup-winning Springbok and an 88-cap All-Black, a reality that speaks volumes about their squad depth. That R.G. Snyman's influence grew as the game wore on. After a relatively subdued opening period, the towering lock asserted himself in the second half, providing the kind of composure and creativity that can swing tight contests. While he was guilty of a couple of ambitious offloads that went astray near the Edinburgh line, his willingness to keep the ball alive was central to Leinster's revival. Scott Penny will deservedly take the headlines for his hat trick, but Snyman's subtle contributions, drawing defenders, extending phases, and creating space, were just as important. In moments when Leinster needed calm leadership and technical excellence, the Springbok delivered. The same cannot yet be said of Rico Ione. Leinster's marquee signing arrived in Dublin with enormous expectations, but his struggles at test level in 2025 appear to have followed him into provincial rugby. This was another subdued outing, lacking the explosiveness and authority that defined his All Blacks career. Comparisons with Geordie Barrett are perhaps unfair, but they are inevitable given the billing and financial investment. For now, Ione looks short of confidence and impact, and Leinster will be hoping for a significant upturn as the season progresses. From a player of his pedigree, far more is expected. The Freddy Douglas effect: if there was one Edinburgh player to leave Dublin with enhanced credentials, it was Freddy Douglas. The decision to release the 20-year-old flanker for this fixture raised eyebrows, but Townsend may have wanted to assess him in a high-intensity environment before making final Six Nations decisions that, on the basis of this performance, Douglas made a compelling case. From the opening minutes, he was a nuisance at the breakdown, winning a penalty turnover and forcing Leinster into multiple infringements simply through his presence and threat over the ball. Even when his influence did not show up directly on the stats sheet, Leinster were clearly adjusting their approach to prevent him latching on as the game wore on. Leinster's experienced cleaners found ways to neutralize him, and Douglas was penalized once in the second half. But that should not detract from what was another impressive display from a player who continues to mature rapidly. His composure, physicality, and breakdown intelligence suggest he is already capable of contributing at international level. Whether as a starter or an impact option from the bench, it would be a surprise if Townsend ignored him for the Six Nations that a competition under strain. Beyond the result itself, this match once again highlighted an uncomfortable truth about the URC's place in the rugby calendar. Fixtures that are ostensibly important are routinely undermined by international call-ups, resulting in heavily rotated squads and a diluted product. Leinster are perhaps the most obvious example, but they are far from alone. Welsh, Irish, Scottish, and Italian sides all found themselves without key personnel this weekend, raising legitimate questions about the competition's credibility during the Six Nations window. The contrast with the Gallagher Premiership is stark. English clubs paused their domestic season entirely during the international tournament, ensuring that marquee fixtures are contested by full-strength teams. The URC, by contrast, presses on with reduced squads and compromised lineups, often to the detriment of match quality and narrative. Edinburgh were relatively fortunate to have players like Vander Merwe, Douglas, and Magnus Bradbury available, but even they were missing influential figures such as Ewan Ashman and Pierre Schoeman. For Leinster, the impact is even more pronounced given the scale of their international representation. Ultimately, form and depth told on the night, but the broader issue remains unresolved. If the URC aspires to greater prestige and commercial appeal, the scheduling clash with the Six Nations is a problem that cannot be ignored. Final thoughts: Leinster will be satisfied with another professional victory, one that showcased their resilience, depth, and ability to adapt under pressure. Scott Penny's hat trick, R.G. Snyman's class, and Luke McGrath's control ensured that even a depleted side could maintain their relentless march up the table. For Edinburgh, the frustration deepens. There were moments of promise and passages of quality, but familiar flaws, defensive lapses, missed opportunities, and a lack of cutting edge at crucial times once again proved costly. Until they learn to turn promising positions into tangible rewards, their season will continue to flatter to deceive, for the URC itself. Matches like this serve as both a testament to its competitiveness and a reminder of its structural challenges. The rugby remains compelling, but the context in which it is played increasingly demands scrutiny.